Okay, yeah, speaking of Katie Britt. Now, if you saw the State of the Union response by Katie Britt, and if you did not, it is rare that I recommend anything to anyone to be watched, but this you really got to watch. It was incredibly strange and wonderfully strange. And also make sure you check out the promo for it so you get a sense of like what she's doing when she's not sort of like been overly coached to dramatically deliver a speech. She gave the speech from her kitchen. She has a 6,500 square foot house because she wants to relate to Americans. I guess the house costs $750,000 or $650,000, which, you know, if you're in New York, that's not going to get you, you know, that much square footage if you buy it. But in Alabama, it gets you 6,500 square feet. So it's really not the typical home for anybody, really. I mean, 6,500 square feet in New York would probably cost you like $8, $9, $10 million. I don't know.
I grew up in a nice middle class house in North Dakota, and that's about a third of that size.
We had a big house growing up. It was an old house, and I can't even imagine it was like even like a third of that. Like that's just
a basketball court in there.
Enormous house and this massive kitchen. And you know, she's talking about how like she and her husband get together. Don't know if our kids can pursue the American dream. Well, they will, it appears, because of, you know, state tax rates. They will land right in the American dream, which is keep the money amongst a certain class people, and that's about it. But nevertheless, she told a story about meeting with a woman who was trafficked and who had been raped over and over and over again. And this woman does exist. And the story of her being trafficked and being raped is true. But journalist Jonathan Katz sort of did some digging into it and found out, well, that put up his image, and people can find the TikTok. But basically, the long and short of it is, this happened from 2004 to 2008. It happened in Mexico, and obviously under the George Bush presidency. And if anything, Katie Britt tried to make the argument, this is why you don't let immigrants in. Oh, and it wasn't by a drug cartel. It was by basically just some local sex traffickers. She's telling this story to scare people about immigrants. This is why, you know, this is what's happening with Joe Biden's open border policy. If anything, this story is a prime example of why you have a policy like we have had in the past for asylum seekers. This is why you want to open the doors for immigrants so that they can escape situations like this.
So not victimized in the shadow of our wall.
Exactly. So kudos to Katz for figuring this out. And then it just sort of, the doors blew open. And here's CNN weighing in on Rafael Romo speaks with Carla Jacinto. This is the woman who Katie Britt was referring to. We can go to his report. We don't need the first part. And he interviewed her.
Tell us more about who she is and why she has decided to speak out tonight. Erica, her name is Carla Jacinto, and I have known her since 2014. CNN profiled her story as part of CNN's Freedom Project, which seeks to raise awareness about modern-day slavery. Jacinto says she's very careful about who she gives her testimony to and how and when she does it. So she was very surprised, Erica, she told me, when she found out yesterday that she was involuntarily put in the middle of a social media storm. This storm was prompted by what appears to be the use of her story during the Republican response to the State of the Union address by Alabama Senator Katie Britt. I reached out to Carla Jacinto in Mexico City for her reaction, and this is part of what she told me. Let's take a listen. At one point when I met you years and years ago, you told me that you felt like at the beginning Mexican politicians had taken advantage of you by using your story for political purposes. Do you feel like that happened once again here in the United States?
Yes. In fact, I hardly ever cooperate with politicians because it seems to me that they only want an image. They only want a photo. And that to me is not fair.
Trabajo como vocera.
I work as a spokesperson for many victims who have no voice, and I really would like them to be empathetic. All the governors, all the senators to be empathetic with the issue of human trafficking, because there are millions of girls and boys who disappear all the time. People who are really trafficked and abused, as she mentioned. And I think she should first take into account what really happens before telling a story of that magnitude.
And Erica, Carla Jacinto also told me that Senator Britt got many of the facts of her story wrong. First of all, Jacinto says that one, she was not trafficked by Mexican drug cartels, but by a pimp that operated as part of a family that entrapped vulnerable girls in order to force them into prostitution. Two, she also said that she was never trafficked in the United States, as Senator Britt appeared to suggest. Three, she was kept in captivity from 2004 to 2008 when President George W. Bush, a Republican, was in office, as opposed to the current administration, as the senator implied. And four, she met the senator at an event at the border with other government officials and anti-human trafficking activists instead of one-on-one. CNN has confirmed much of what Jacinto has said in prior reporting, and her story hasn't changed since we first spoke. Jacinto told me no one reached out to her to ask for her permission to use her story as part of a political speech. Someone using my story and distorting it for political purposes, she told me, is not fair at all. Erica?
There you go. Classic State of the Union response by the Republicans.
Well, the good news is, I mean, regardless of the content, it was well delivered. So
It was very well delivered. But I will say this, and I think this is important to note, and I'm very curious about this. Charlie Kirk, and we showed this on Friday, Charlie Kirk came out with a tweet about her within seconds of her starting the speech. And I don't think his complaint was that, why would they put her in a kitchen? It leads me to believe that there is some other internal dynamic here that there is a faction within the Republican Party that was already out to get her, and that's why it was so sort of like there was no pushback from the Republicans in any way whatsoever. In a very interesting sort of lack of pushback. I mean, it strikes me as that if you get tapped to do that, somebody doesn't like you. Because it has never worked out for anybody.
I'll be honest, I'd never heard of Katie Britt.
I had not either.
I mean, I may have seen that name before, but never an image crossed my...
No, but now I think we're going to see, like, I don't think that's going to help her down the road, but maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe she knew that, and that's why she was delivering it like a hostage victim.